Houston Cougars, a furious comeback to knock off Duke and advance to the national championship game.
Here is Zeon Chris, big hole, open sesame. Zeon Chris, wow, the 72-yard house call.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Horn Podcast. I will spare you, the listeners, and my co-host here by doing my just truly awful version of Stained. It's been a while, but we did have a rare week off last week. Not entirely planned. I had an oral surgery that I was able to move up a day, and as much as I love recording the podcast on Tuesdays, I loved the idea of being one day further along in recovery to do this thing, and we didn't have necessarily the most meaty episode planned for last week, but we've landed on a week where we have two podcasts for you wonderful people tonight. This U of H themed podcast, a fun summer off topic one that probably going to release a little after this one on this feed that I'm excited to do here. So Bobby and you and I will do a lot of talking to each other tonight about some exciting Cougar topics. The summer league has really kicked off, and I think we have enough games to kind of get some ideas of who's done what and just the cool moments seeing Emanuel Sharp in a Kings jersey, Kingston Flemings in a Hawks jersey, Chris Cenac in a Celtics jersey, not to name the entirety of the guys that we saw, some Cougar baseball, probable soon to be alums beginning their professional careers, getting drafted. We'll talk a little bit about that and our main topic, another summer tradition, answering some really awesome listener questions. Bobby, like I said, a lot of podcasting, not a lot of time to do it in tonight. So I will ask you, how are we doing, friend?
I'm good, man. Good. Just I had a sudden trip to McAllen last week, this past weekend. McAllen, a lot better city than you might think if you just check it out. Yeah, it's
if I could live like 30, 40 minutes from Padre, whatever it is, like not a bad life there. Like that does check a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, food's good. People were super nice. Weird thing, that you're still in the United States and the first language everyone starts to speak to you is Spanish because you're right there by the border. Definitely throws you off. And then if you're somebody who doesn't speak Spanish but looks like they might speak a little pequeño español, it's definitely a treat when they start talking to you in Spanish and you're just like, I got nothing, man. Pollo, I guess. I just want chicken fajitas, man. so
Look,
it's
I mean, far be it from me, the guy who looks second most likely to speak Spanish on this Zoom call, but free advice for you and the listeners too. You could work at lo siento, no entiendo. And there's gonna be some Spanish speakers who are actually like, no, what the actual right way to say is this. So acknowledging that. That's just you saying I'm sorry. I don't understand to them.
I do know that.
That's free game for you, Bobby, and all the other just very non-Spanish speaking people who want to seem a little more polite. Didn't think you'd get a Spanish lesson this early. All right, steering this back on track, we'll mention, as we do always at the top, patreon.com/SHPAWDcast. That's the way you could support the work that Bobby and I do on a weekly basis. 11 seasons now, almost complete, going into our 12th here next month. The longest running independent Houston Cougar podcast. If you enjoy the work we do on a weekly basis, you have a little discretionary income to do so. One more time, patreon.com/SHpodcast. Probably the biggest topic since we last recorded. It's mid-July, so biggest topic is a little relative here, but something I'm always pretty excited about in that period between when guys get drafted and summer league starts. Your first chance. And I think we've been very fortunate that nearly every year we've had a new crop of Cougar alums to watch here in Summer League and consider a future professional career for a number of players we very much enjoyed watching in college and are enjoying seeing succeed out on their own in the professional ranks. This Summer League in 2026, by a good margin, the most total Cougar alums that I can remember participating in this event. We'll run through the guys here, what they've done so far. Bobby, cut in as you would like. And it's kind of an update after a week plus of action. Never a huge sample size, and quite often you'll see, like Kingston Flemings did in his last game, first guy I'm going to talk about here, you will see some of the higher draft picks, the I would say load management is the pejorative word I think that gets used for it these days among NBA fans. But we don't need to see 7 games of AJ DeBonsa that the Wizards shut after 2 games. Like, all
That
right,
guy's
yeah,
good.
that
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 guy's
guy's
good.
good. That guy's good. We probably don't need to risk something terrible happening in Game 5 of the Summer League. There, Kingston not shut down for the Summer League as of yet, but he did get shut down his last game, not for a specific injury. I just for again what was generally described as load management there. I think to me the biggest reason to be bullish on Flemings, a guy who you can make a case for. I think you can make a case right now for 2 guys who have stood out the most among this group of Cougar rookies in Summer League. But the biggest reason to be bullish on him is that he hasn't shot extraordinarily well. Not awful to be clear, but 42% true shooting percentage, probably a little lower than he'd want it to be. And yet he has found so many ways to create a good first impression, to positively impact things for his new team, the Hawks. He's third among all players at Summer League in assist rate, has a good steal, block numbers across the, I believe, 3 games he's played to this point as well. I know 4 games to this point, had a bit of a rough 6 turnover effort his last time out against the Nets. And I believe that's the most recent Summer League game he's played to date. But prior to that, had a total of 3 turnovers in all of his Summer League games prior to that. I'd almost rather him be out there taking some risks and learning some things in these kind of situations because, yes, there's value in learning how to win, but you're getting a really watered down taste of what professional basketball looks like and learning a bit more of what's required for that level, even though it's not close to really what you're seeing in the NBA. It's close to what you're getting in college, but that development, that learning, I think for a guy who got drafted where Kingston got drafted is more important than the wins and losses. The finishing near the basket needs work, but if you watched Kingston at U of H, not that we didn't see him do an electric job at that, but you probably knew that was something that was going to need work as he progressed to the highest level of basketball. I think the only thing that would have concerned me at all is if we weren't seeing the playmaking, the leadership, which he's gotten really high marks for, the defensive intensity, also gotten really high marks for, but you've seen all those things in spades. So to me, the shooting is really secondary there. Obviously, it's something he's going to need to get figured out, but I'd be more concerned if all of the playmaking and the defense, the all over the game stuff we saw from Kingston Flemings wasn't happening. And it very much has been when he's been on the court for the Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, even some of the things I've seen on social media about him are things that he's doing pregame and stuff like that that just shows that he's at a level of maturity that you just don't see from a lot of 18, 19-year-olds like him. I saw like this one clip of him going really crazy of everyone or not everyone of him testing out all the different basketballs and deciding
that's probably the one that's going the most viral.
Yeah, you've seen a lot of people kind of talking about that he's doing those things that you want from your point guard, right? Those little things that make a difference that maybe your shooters appreciate a little bit more. Those are the little things that you can do in addition to what he's doing on the court. Like you said, he had that one bad 6 turnover game. It happens, especially from a rookie who's handling the ball as much as he is. Those things are going to happen in Summer League. They're going to happen pretty much anywhere. But he seems to be doing the little things that make a professional basketball player a very, very good professional basketball player. And Hawks fans have seemed more than excited by what they've got out of him.
It sort of reminds me, this might seem like a weird comp, but I think it's one that'll click for you. You hear about like the high prospect minor league baseball pitchers. Sometimes they're like, hey man, we need you to work on your curveball this game. Like we need you to work on your pitch mix. Like, don't be worried about don't be like really like, we need to work on this specific thing here. And so, or spring training is really where you see that the most, but maybe like a guy who's really out there to work on his stuff, work on getting his velocity back more than
we need you to go
last
out.
Kingston game is kind of just like, okay, I'd rather him maybe like you're taking more chances, maybe you're trying to like get out of your comfort zone and take a suggestion the coaching staff said and just like, you know what, I'm going to do this, like I'm going to do this and not be focused more on, am I better at this now at the end of the game than I was at the start than my counting stats, because it's Summer League ultimately.
Yeah, we need you to get ahead in more counts. Like we just need you to work on being up and not being afraid to pound the zone. And then he goes out and he gives up 7 hits on first pitches, and you're like, that's okay. He's hitting the zone, and that's kind of what we need him to do. Now, how do we get that control and put it into swing and miss type stuff? I think you're absolutely right. Hey,
Yeah.
we need you to find that guy out on the wing just a little bit more. Take the risk, and you'll learn what you need to do to get that ball to the wing. Right? You'll learn that angle. Maybe now you need to zip it a little bit.
One of your
a
NBA
little bit
teammates who's
harder.
now in the summer league, like you're gonna want to run a lot of action for
Right.
this guy here, or
Exactly.
something like that.
No, I
just
think
doing
I
those
think
general
that's a great.
terms.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great comp when you look at something like that. Is that what happened? We don't know, but that does
Yeah.
make a lot of sense to me as well.
Certainly summer league is that kind of work
Mhm.
on stuff. At least if you're, I mean, it's very different if you're Milos Uzan, you're like, hey man, I gotta like make a team or
Mhm.
put enough good film that another team wants me to be a part of their team. But for Kingston Flemings, this is about development. That's the luxury of when you're as good of a college player as Kingston was. It shouldn't surprise anyone that he has those intangibles. Like if you know college basketball pretty well, if you're a Cougar fan, you know Kelvin Sampson is so demanding of his point guards, and that this guy was able to have the trust he had this past season. Oh, this is a different cat. Like this is a good reason why this guy was the 8th overall pick. If I had to make an argument for someone else who's the buzziest recent Cougar alum player in summer league so far, I could make a good argument along with Flemings for Emanuel Sharp. He's been a constant positive presence for the Kings in both their Vegas summer league games and their prior California Classic, kind of an early pre-summer league or pre-Vegas summer league.
Preseason.
No, it is. I think it's still. I was gonna say. I think it's,
it's considered summer league.
Yeah, like Golden State plays them or something like that. I think
Yeah.
Utah has one in Salt Lake with
Yep.
Denver as well, but don't quote me on that.
Yep.
I'm trying to get too ahead of myself here, Bobby, because it's summer league, not the actual NBA regular season. But it was so obvious that this guy was drafted way lower than he should have been in the second round. I mean, pardon my French here. Emanuel Sharp is just a fucking basketball player, man, and that's what Kings fans who seem to be pretty excited about his early performances have been treated to. Not just a guy who has a deep 3-point range, though he does have that, but a guy who's just a pest of a defender who's going to give you so much beyond just being a 3-point shooter. I mean, that last week when they had over the Clippers, he locked down Keaton Wagler, their lottery pick. I want to say he was the 5th or 6th pick in this past draft. Also had 21 points and 4 steals. I mean, his usage level from a summer league game against the Clippers is not going to look like his usage level come regular season, but he's making a case for himself to be a part of their rotation come preseason camp, come the start of the actual season. I mean, summer league doesn't guarantee any player anything necessarily, but he's actually in decent shape as a second rounder. Second rounders get a lot better crack at actually being a part of a team now than they did if your frame of reference is more 10 or 15 years ago. And I think he has only positioned himself even better since getting drafted where he was drafted with his summer league performances. He's done, I would go so far as to say, everything you could do as a second round draft pick, playing in his first pro action to create a good impression on his new team. Like it's been really good, but no Cougar fan I think will be super surprised about that.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the crazy ones is he has shown up. Not that I'm shocked by it or anything like that. I think you knew the Kings knew what they got when he signed that contract. I mean, they gave him a full, a guaranteed $3.6 million. Like you don't see that very often from mid second round picks. They knew they got a steal there, and I think he is more than paying it off for them. You see Kings fans just absolutely losing their minds over watching him just absolutely defensively lock down guys. And again, it's summer league. You don't want to get too far over your skis, but whew, buddy, he is looking like the G League isn't going to be a place where he's going to spend a lot of time this year.
You'd think not. Like I think a great first impression on the Kings fan base and a good situation because it's not like, okay, he's been awesome, but they're already 9 or 10 veterans deep on their team. That's not the Kings right now. And
Yep.
I think they also realize he could be a positive culture guy in that way as well, as they're coming off a pretty bad season, looking to just do something pretty radically different there. I don't want to overshadow Chris Cenac's positive start to his pro career at the Boston Celtics as well, along with his summer league teammate Milos Uzan, who I think is in his position done about as well as you could reasonably hope in the start to summer league, really trying to make an impression as an undrafted guy. Neither Cenac or Uzan started their summer league opener against the Raptors, but I could say from watching that one live on Friday that they got noticeably better once those two guys came off the bench and started playing. Cenac was the first guy off the bench Milos might have been the second on their entire team, but at minimum, he was one of the first, while Cenac was literally first guy who subbed in for them in an honestly pretty low scoring, ugly game that I will admit that I went to do the dishes during parts of it or clean up this and that. It was a game that maybe didn't demand 4 quarters of focus. He hit a quarter 3-pointer as time expired in the fourth to send it to OT. They eventually won it in OT. He finished with a double-double, 14 points and 10 boards along with 4 blocks. Last night he had 16 points, 5 boards, and 4 blocks against the Hawks. Sadly, we didn't get the Flemings Cenac head-to-head there. That was the game that I alluded to Flemings being rested for. Nice bounce back because he had kind of a quiet game against the Hornets over the weekend, though I heard in terms of his shot blocking and defense, he did well in that one, just didn't really get involved offensively. I mean, you've seen the diversity of the ways where Cenac can score. Something that I thought was kind of underrated from the people outside this fan base. Like, it's not a surprise to us that Chris Cenac can hit a three-pointer. Like, he doesn't look at times like a guy who can, but he absolutely has a good shooting stroke. Not an entirely finished product of a shooting stroke, but the guy can shoot it a bit. And maybe the most, I think, exciting surprise, 9 blocks through 3 games played after having 18 in his entire 25-26 Cougar season. Though I think some of that has to do with the fact that he's back playing the 5 after playing the 4 spot next to JoJo Tugler most of this past season. So kind of asked to do different things there. So you knew with Cenac it wasn't going to maybe pop. I mean, if nothing else, for the position he plays generally, as it was maybe the Flemings or Sharp. But I've actually been pleasantly surprised, Bobby. I thought there was a chance he'd have a good game or two, but he's been more of a stabilizing force than I expected him to be for the Celtics. Like, I think it's not as much of a no-brainer as Sharp right now because I think Sharp was drafted criminally low, but I think Cenac could be a steal at 27th. I'm not going to put the mouth on it, but he's done all the things that I would have wanted him to do. Like, he looks like a better shot blocker because he's playing, I think, in his more natural position. The rebounding just as good as we expected it coming out of the Coogs, and looks confident shooting and looks confident scoring in a number of different ways. And I think showing off how he was like an abnormally skilled big man at times.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we've seen from Cenac is his ability. You pointed this out, to get blocks. Having 9 already in summer league and having 18 in his entire U of H career. That's huge. And that's the kind of performance that gets you on an NBA court, and you can stay there. Like you said, I think him changing positions and being a little bit more of a 4 rather than a 5 has been super good for him in terms of his matchups and things like that, where he's needed defensively, things along that line. So I think things have looked really good for Chris Cenac.
Yeah, you can tell they're trying to make this summer league a way to get their young Spanish recent draftee Hugo Gonzalez, start to get him confidence, start to get him, maybe more capable of contributing at a higher level once it comes to the actual NBA season. So the offense isn't running through Cenac, but when he's had opportunities, he's mostly been, I think, a strong positive there for them. We'll say this about Milos Uzan, and I think he might make the decision of teams not drafting him look somewhat silly. I mean, more than anything, it's so cliche, but we saw it so conclusively in every game he's played for the Celtics so far. The guy's a winner. Like, he played a good amount of minutes his first 2 summer league games, was plus 41 combined over those 2 games. To date, in 3 games, he has a total of 16 assists. I've watched multiple Celtics summer league games, purely eye test. When you see Uzan and Cenac on the court, the Celtics look like a more calm team. They look like a team that's playing with more purpose, which isn't always something you see in summer league. If anything, sometimes it's the exception because it's development for young rookie high draft picks and guys desperately trying to make some kind of impression like that. That's why the minor league baseball comparison is kind of a good one, because it's just like you got AJ DeBonsa out there, worth several tens of millions of dollars at this point with a super max contract probably in his future, and guys who are probably playing for less than what you and I make somewhere last year, but still on the periphery enough that they're like, hey, well, I'm not going to turn down a summer league invite and play. It's the fun range there. And I think Milos Uzan has definitely separated himself from the latter category there. Again, what you could do as an undrafted guy like there's only but so much, but I've seen a number of things written about how, hey, this guy is really in contention for their final two-way spot. And if he can go from undrafted to two-way guy, which I think he's done everything he can to make that case, I think that tells you he's done a good job so far this summer, controlling what he can control.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of my thought. If you can get that two-way, I think you've done a really good job in terms of being an undrafted guy. Now, if you don't get that, but somehow you still are in, I think he's done enough to get himself a G League contract with the team.
You literally have that exact note. Yep.
Where he's not going to have to go across he's not going to have to go overseas. And if you're on a G League team, then you're at least like on the radar of NBA teams. Not to say you're not on the radar if you go overseas, right, or something like that, but it's much easier to go G League to NBA than it is to go Europe, G League, NBA.
Or it's like it's not just like, oh, you're signing with the main Celtics, which are their G League team, just to have a team to play on. Like the Celtics have your rights if you do end up popping off at G League.
Yeah.
Like they think there's a possibility you can. So that's the good thing. It's raised the floor of I think what Milos can expect to do this next season, which won't be easy, but still better position than a lot of guys out there who are trying to play pro basketball. Certainly a lot of undrafted guys out there who are trying to play pro basketball. We'll stick with Cougar Sport alums here. In the past week or so since we recorded a podcast, we saw the highest number of Houston Cougar baseball alums picked in the Major League Baseball draft since 2019. And one of the big picture things that makes that impressive, if you're unfamiliar with the MLB draft, which totally understandable, probably not usually on the radar, people who are MLB fans, but maybe don't follow college baseball more than casually or maybe less. They actually reduced the draft from 40 rounds to 5 rounds. This is an onset of the COVID-19 pandemic kind of thing. And several years ago, they returned it to a longer length, but it's still a lot shorter now by actually about half than it was pre-pandemic. I mean, you have compensatory rounds that make the math kind of squirrely, which is to say, considering you have 20 rounds now instead of 40, long-winded way, just saying, hey, U of H matching its 2019 total in a much longer draft is pretty impressive. No surprise, the first Cougar taken was outfielder and sometimes DH Trey Broussard was selected by the Cleveland Guardians in the 3rd round and then 95th overall pick in this draft. And not a huge surprise, Trey came into the 2026 season with some draft buzz after a promising sophomore season. Did miss some time hurt, but still led you in batting average and stolen bases, tied on the team for 2nd in walks. And obviously Trey's ascent through the Guardians minor league system will have to be based on the on-field product. That he was a higher draft pick certainly doesn't hurt from him being on their radar as being a development priority for the team generally, even if draft position won't guarantee him anything beyond a healthy, just under $1 million bonus, which is no small thing. And it does put him a little higher on the radar than an undrafted guy or a very later rounds of this draft guy.
Yeah. And it's baseball is so different in terms of its draft and its development and how you see guys develop. But if you're going top 100, you got a good chance at even starting in high A, double A, something like that. So I think they're putting a lot of confidence in you if you were coming in as a top 100 draft pick like Trey was.
Definitely. We also saw 4 other Cougars get selected on the 2nd and final day of the draft, which was last Sunday, plus U of H commit whose decision will be one to watch here. Over the summer, Alex Solis was the first second-day Cougar taken as the Giants took him in the 14th round. Played all 3 of his seasons at U of H in college. Never entirely put it together. Was probably one of your better relief options this past season and got himself selected with genuinely good swing and miss stuff. He struck out 73 batters and 70 innings over these past 2 seasons while noticeably reducing his walks going from sophomore to this past season, his junior year. Next, you had Ryan Rodriguez. He went 15 picks after Solis in the 14th round, was selected by the defending champion Dodgers. This past season was his first one at U of H after 2 seasons at Ole Miss. Played JUCO ball, was originally from, I believe, Fort Worth. Was probably your best relief option over the course of the season. Showed good swing and miss stuff. And I think importantly, threw more innings combined than he did in the 2 prior full seasons at Ole Miss, showing that he could actually be a guy who can put some innings on his arm. Richie Roman was your next Cougar taken, got picked in the 17th round by the Royals. Another 3-year Coog like Solis. Really promising guy in flashes. Started 2 seasons ago as your closer. I think at one point was like the saves leader in the country or close to it. He flashed really good swing and miss stuff, but struggled really bad in the back half of that sophomore season. Started the season in the rotation, but got hurt early in the year and came back. clearly on some innings restrictions, good swing and miss stuff, clearly progressed from year 1 to year 3 in the program, which is why I was hopeful he'd be back with the Cougs, but obviously don't begrudge him, what I think is probably the more likely decision, that he's going to play pro baseball, even acknowledging no inside info there. Carson Sabathia was the non-pitcher out of this quartet that was taken on the draft second day, getting picked by the Milwaukee Brewers in the 20th round. Really promising toolsy hitter who flashed that at times when he was healthy over his 2 seasons at U of H, was previously a really highly regarded prep recruit out of Jersey who started his college career at Georgia Tech. Seems like the kind of player you'd take a flyer on in the final round and hope that, hey, this guy who's shown in flashes the ability to hit for power can stay healthy enough and eventually in your system kind of realize that obvious potential with 20th round bonus. You're getting maybe something better than 20th round player on 20th round money, at least his first go through the system.
Yeah, and that you sometimes see that where guys are pretty good players, but they get drafted a little bit later because they are seniors, and so when they're seniors, you can offer them a little bit less money, and they don't have anywhere else to go. So you see that sometimes. Kind of cool that Carson was drafted by probably the team that I most think of his dad being on, the Milwaukee Brewers. Just kind of a cool little thing there.
Yeah.
A lot of people think of CC as a Yankee, but I remember him as a Brewer. Richie Roman, I thought very good player. Every time I watched him, I was like, that's a pretty solid baseball player there. I think the Royals are getting a good one there. Not a terrible organization to go to. They develop talent really well. Now, if he wants to get paid later on, that's a different question. Ryan Rodriguez going to the Dodgers. Who doesn't want to be a Dodger right now if you are a professional baseball player? So yeah, you are good spots, and it's so much different than the NBA and the NFL draft in that you are looking for guys to make a difference immediately. Don't expect to see these guys in the next year. It's probably at least a 3-year stint for them down in the minors, kind of working their way. If it's 2 years, a lot of teams are going to be beyond excited if they see that.
Yeah, the 1-1 pick from UCLA, like you might see that guy early next year or something like that, but yeah, probably not gonna see most of these guys for a while, which is one of the unique and interesting things about this draft. I alluded to this earlier. One of the more notable Cougar baseball projected incoming transfers, catcher Max Coffer, who previously played at Wichita State. He was taken in the 18th round by your Texas Rangers, Bobby. Was a one-time very good high school recruit, was one of the youngest stars in college baseball because he enrolled early as a freshman at A&M. Good defensively, never really got the bat going there, but finally this past season at Wichita State was really off to a scorching hot start to the year before getting hurt right before the start of conference play. Definitely one of your incoming transfers that I think you're more excited about out of this group. So, yeah, I gotta be honest, hard to turn down, especially with the draft being shorter. Back in the day, I mean, guys do elect to go back to school when getting picked at this point in the draft. But for a guy who just got done with his 4th year of college, I if I had to guess, and again, no inside info here, feels like a guy who would be more likely to go than not. Hope I'm wrong, obviously, but yeah. Hope your Rangers lowballing, Bobby. That's what I'm hoping for.
Oh, and they will. No, the slot for 18th round is 150,000. That's not money to that's nothing to scoff at there, but you're due hoping that he comes back, and I think it's a whole lot different if he's drafted 5th round, 6th round, something like that. 18th, you feel like if you have a good season at a higher level than Wichita State, you might be able to jump up to a 14th, 15th round, something like that, and make yourself a little bit more money there.
So we will get to some Big 12 Media Day talk, though. We kind of agree between ourselves there was nothing urgent enough that came out of Big 12 football media days that we absolutely had to talk about this week. But considering it's July, considering I'm sure we'll have some time to talk about it, we'll at least find time, Bobby, to play that clip of that one guy mispronouncing tortillas worse than you've ever heard anyone mispronounce tortillas in his life, and talk about our favorite flavors of Monster Energy, because we're a podcast that covers Monster Energy presents the 2026 Big 12 football season.
Yes,
Yeah,
Monster
we're
Energy. Big
loyal
12
to
football.
Monster Energy, if nothing else. We'll have a lot of Monster Energy talk in their Big 12 deal, certainly.
Yeah, we'll put Big 12 Monster Energy patches on our shirts whenever we do this podcast. Sound good?
I'll stand on my desk and I'll do like the Stone Cold Steve Austin beer crack, but I'll do it with 2 sugar-free white Monster cans. How about that?
What?
Sound good?
Because we
didn't want to delay our main segment. We're pretty excited to answer kind of an annual July summer tradition, some listener Q&As from patrons and listeners, largely patrons of the Scott and Holman podcast, maybe a little general college athletics thrown in there as well. It's a good thing to kick around in the time of year where we don't have on-field Cougar sports to talk about or even preview in our immediate future. And of course, really, really appreciate everyone who submitted their questions for tonight's episode. I wanted to kick it off tonight with this question from Shelly. He asks an interesting question, one I've never really thought about it until I saw this question submitted for the show. He asks, if you could go back in time to attend any U of H sporting event in person pre-1980, what event would it be and why? He adds, mine would be the game of the century in the Dome versus UCLA in 1968, basketball, if you're one of the 2 people listening who's not aware. Bobby, what's your pre-90 U of H in-person sporting event you're attending?
All right, so I have it down to 2, and I think I'm going to go with this one. I think this is my number 1 here. I'm going all the way back to 1946, and I am going back to the first ever home game of your Houston Cougar football team versus Ooh La La. I think that would just be a really cool thing to be at. 1947. I have a program from the second ever home game. I've only ever seen pictures of the first one. There's a gentleman who owns it, who has the biggest Cougar collection that I've ever seen. And I was like, does anyone have it? I want to buy it. And he was like, it's not for sale, but here it is. And I have the program for the second home game that U of H ever played. Having the first one would be really cool. But just watching, we talked a lot about during women's golf that watching history be made. Like, it would be really, really cool to be there for that game and just, go into just what football looked like back then is insane. Like, just this podcast doesn't exist if that game doesn't happen, right? Like, there's a good chance you and I don't go to U of H if that doesn't happen. Like, everything that we think of kind of ties back to that game, and I think that'd be a really cool one to be at. And then my second one, I'm sorry if this is your answer, but I would go back to Warren McVay's very first game. I think technically, I kind of read a little bit as I was reading about that. He didn't technically be the first athlete or the first football player in Texas to break the color barrier.
It's like because UNT. I was gonna say UNT. Yeah, I believe was the
that
first
is
one.
Correct.
Yeah,
and I think it would be good.
I think it was first major college. I think is how it's generally described. I think.
Yeah. And I think anyone about 10 years older than us and younger should, like, when we think of that craziness and what those times were like we think it was a long time ago. It wasn't. That was 1964, man. And like, we hear stories and we read stories about the kind of stuff that people of color experienced in the 60s, and we hear about it and we see these being there and just like hearing the vitriol that he probably got that day just from anybody. And look, I don't want to pat us on the back. Like, there were probably some U of H fans who were really upset that this was happening. Like, whether it was a home game, away game, I didn't even look up what game it was. Just to hear the things that he probably had to deal with, I think would be really eye-opening for a lot of us. Like, we hear the stories, but to actually experience it, I think would be a completely different thing. And it would change a lot of people's outlook on just how we talk about athletes and how we do all that. So I do think the right answer is probably the game of the century. Like, that's probably it changed college basketball. Like, that feels like the right answer, but I didn't want to give that answer because Shelly already gave that answer. So Sam, what was your answer, bud?
Yeah, I think having it not include that game, which is probably the rightest answer that you could objectively give to that, was a good mental exercise. And I think you landed on 2 really interesting games that I will admit didn't consider either of them. I feel pretty decent about mine, but I feel like I have the third most interesting of the picks we're going to talk about here. I went with the 30-0 win during our first Southwest Conference season in 1976 over the Longhorns. The game became known as the Dad's Day Massacre. And I think that season has a good argument for your best in U of H program history. It's not an inconclusive one, but it was a very, very good season. And to do it in your first season in the SWC, I think just kind of amplifies how awesome it was. Absolute butt kicking from the word go. They have not been shut out at home, Bobby, to date. 50 years later since that game.
We're that guy.
They weren't shut out for, I believe, the math here, 39 years after that. They got shut in the 2015 season by Iowa State. Mad Dog defense led by All-American future pro Wilson Whitley, Lombardi winner, held the Longhorns. Usually fearsome Darrell Royal Wishbone offense to 24 yards rushing, forced four Longhorn turnovers as well. Ran all over their defense with Bill Yeoman's veer offense. Allowed the Cougs to really control the game's second half. I can't imagine how satisfying that would have been to be there in person for. If you're a U of H fan, alum, or student at that time, you're finally getting to see the team play against the Longhorns. This team with some recent national championships, the cachet they have in the state, and you probably have lots of friends and family who won't shut up about the Longhorns. And it's the Longhorns, even though they didn't go there. You went to the University of Houston, a school that in your own right has been awesome, but haven't gotten a chance to prove it yet to date in the Southwest Conference. I got to also shout out to Go Coogs on this one, because I got this quote from their very good write-up from last year, I believe, about the Dad's Day Massacre, Bobby. It's from Bill Yeoman. He said, when he was asked about whether because at that point they were on a 42-game home winning streak. The Longhorns had not lost in 42 games, and that spanned, I believe, 9 seasons prior to that point. Was asked, was that intimidating? He said, quote, "We have played in most of the great mythical stadiums. We've been between the hedges in Georgia. We've been in Oxford, Mississippi, and East Lansing, Michigan. And our players realize that no bleacher, no wall, no grandstand seats could come out and make a tackle. When you have this level of understanding, you just go out and play a football game."
Love it.
Yeah, Bill Yeoman could give a fucking quote, man. Bill Yeoman could give a quote.
Here, I love your answer. I think yours is probably the best answer in terms of best game to go to. I think
most interesting, yours, most satisfying win, because I think we lost to Ooh La La in the opener, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm just imagining you standing out in the mud. Probably some. I think they played on roughly the site of where Robertson was, right?
That is correct.
I imagine you traveling back in time, like wearing like a 1940s style like jacket. You're like, God, it's so hot out here. And then you realize that like what 1946 AC is like, and you're like, no. You realize you're stuck.
Where's my time machine? It's time to go.
You're realizing how is it hotter in 1946 Houston than it is in like present day Houston? All right, Bobby, next question. Let's do it.
All right, next question. This one I am super excited to talk about. I have away tickets for the Texas Tech game. What advice do you have to survive a game among the lunatics in Lubbock? And that is from Lewis. Sam, I have some thoughts, but I'm going to pass it over to you first.
I think we're both pretty uniquely prepared to answer this question. I've attended a previous U of H Tech game in Lubbock. You are someone, in my experience, who is pretty good at walking the line between being annoying, but also ingratiating himself among opposing fans. Like, I don't know anyone who walks that line better than you, honestly. I'm not trying to flatter you, buddy. I'm being 100% honest, especially the annoying part. Believe it or not, in terms of fan interactions and that part of the experience in Lubbock, I actually had a perfectly pleasant trip to Lubbock in 2018. I mean, unbeknownst to us, Dustin and I's tickets at the stadium were about as close to the Tech student section as you could be in regular fan seating, which doesn't bode well for that kind of experience, does it, Bobby?
No, it does not.
But it was fine. We weren't hiding that we were U of H fans. We cheered when U of H did good stuff, which they actually did a decent amount of in the first half. None of that good stuff was stopping Tech's offense, but they did some good stuff. I remember there was a small group of students who, as Marquez Stevenson was just having this monster first half against Tech, they were looking at us and they were genuinely like, who is that guy? Because Marquez had one of the best halves like you will ever see, like this side of Donnie Avery's 2007 half against Rice. And we ended up moving to the U of H fan section on the other side of the stadium, not because of anything bad happening. We were just like, okay, well, we're losing here. Let's see if we can change the mojo, go sit among the Cougar fans. And I think we kind of wish we had just stayed in our previous seats among the Tech fans. Though, again, that may be somewhat colored by Tech's quarterback, Alan Bowman, throwing for 605 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, and Cougars surrendering 63 points. But, I mean, before, during, and after this game, there were plenty of Tech fans, because we parked about as far as humanly possible from the stadium. My fault. It wasn't a cheapness thing. It was I didn't know where I should park in Lubbock thing. And I think it was a nice reminder, though, that online isn't real life. Most people's keyboard fingers are bolder than their mouths. And I can't really say much else nice about the in-person Lubbock experience, but at least on that day, maybe it's different now that we're in the Big 12. I don't know, but that part of the experience is fine. Also, we'll add this. I'm not going to dox Lewis, but I know he lives roughly in the same part of Texas as I did 8 years ago when I made this roadie. So I will say Sweetwater Whataburger is a good stop either going to or from Lubbock to the general central-ish part of Texas.
Nice. So, when I saw this question, the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh, I, as you said, Sam, am uniquely qualified for somehow getting all the fans around me to like me, but also being able to talk smack. And really it comes down to step number one is be respectful. Like, you're going into their house, and if something does pop off, there's more of them than there are U of H fans. You're going to lose that fight every single time. But I would say the number one piece of advice is be humble. Like, don't talk smack. You want to cheer for your team, not cheer against the home team. Does that make sense, Sam? Like,
oh, yeah.
You want to happily cheer when your team does good things. It's when you stand up and you start yelling at the other fans that you're going to find trouble. Like, when you start rubbing it in, that's when you're going to start to see some problems. But some of my best memories as like an alum are going on away games and watching, as weird as this sounds, like I want the Cougs to win every game, but there's really no feeling quite like walking out of a stadium after your team won an away game and walking back to the car. There's really no feeling like that. But I will tell you, some of my favorite moments have been the Cougs lose a close one and the other team celebrating, and you gotta kind of eat it. Like, you gotta kind of eat the.
You enjoy you hold on. I'm doing our listeners. You enjoyed that?
There's something, especially like when the one that always comes to my mind is like U of H versus TCU basketball 3 seasons ago now, I want to say, where we lost at their arena.
Yeah, it was first Big 12 season. Yeah, I think it was like our second or third game total in Big 12 men's basketball.
Like, didn't love losing that game, but the celebration and having to eat it a little bit, where you're sitting there and your head's back and everyone's it's all rated down on you. You're like, God damn it. Like, there's something kind of fun about that, because I've been the guy who's yelling at the opposing fan. So like, you kind of got to eat it a little bit. There's something a little bit fun about that. But you cheer for the Cougs and don't yell at the other team's fans. Like, I'll do it occasionally, like TCU again. They stand up until U of H scores, until the visiting team scores. They make you stand up the whole time, right? And that same game, we go down, drain a 3 first possession, and I just go, all right, time for everyone to sit down. And then everyone kind of sits down, and then that kind of gets the banter going. Heading to TCU, when you are, I was walking into the stadium a couple of years ago when we beat them at Amon Carter. And the guy, they do like a shuttle from the frat houses with like guys' trucks. Like, it's actually quite brilliant. And then they like drop them off.
It's kind of delightfully small time. And I mean the mostly positive.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, all the frat parties are happening. And then I guess they make pledges, or guys who can't drink yet, like, drive trucks to the drop off point.
Are we just not like F-150s?
Yeah, like an
F-150s.
Yeah, F-150s.
And you're just getting in the bed of some guy from Grand Prairie's F-150.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Honestly, cool. I don't know why, but I kind of dig it. Yeah,
I love it. And so I'm walking, and there's like 5 guys and their girlfriends or sorority girls or whatever, right? And one of the guys is just yelling at me, "U of H sucks, fuck Houston." And I'm just like, I'm walking, kind of ignoring him, And then he goes, "We're going to beat your ass." And I go, "I know, we're not good." Like, you're not telling me anything I don't know. And then he immediately starts laughing. He daps me up. We're talking. And then the girl is like, "I don't know why you're talking to him. He's a Houston fan." And the guy's like, "He's real, though. He knows what's going on." And we won. And I get to walk past those frat guys and just be like, "Let's go." So, like, it's about respect. And that's how you don't get your ass kicked when you go. Is like, you got to be respectful and realize, and like you said, most Tech fans that I meet outside of Twitter, I actually like a lot. Like, I hate saying that, but like, there's a lot that I don't like, but there's most Tech fans I know are generally decent people. And remember that just what happens in the game is not a reflection on you personally. It does not. If U of H loses, it doesn't mean you're worse than the Tech fan. Like, you guys are both changing your mood on what 18 to 23-year-olds do on a Saturday. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like, I podcast about this, so I care about it a lot, but I'm never gonna fight anybody if they say mean words about Houston. Like, I'm just not. I got better things to do. I have a job. Like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you gotta realize how important it is, and like, try to find something you enjoy out of it. Like, I had a bunch, as I say, after we went to the Tech game. Shout out to co-host Emeritus Dustin, who went with me on this trip 8 years ago, or just under 8 years ago at this point, for being my DD as I drowned that awful football game in C-grade margaritas and Tex-Mex later that night. I think it was USC upset Tom Herman era Longhorns. I think that was like the game that we kind of watched while we were eating. For some reason, that sticks in my mind.
And then you and Tech fans get to bond over that.
Yeah, I didn't feel like bonding with Tech fans at that time. I don't have nearly the enjoyment of seeing my team lose a close game that we've discovered you have tonight. But get to our next question here. Dan asks us, what excites and scares you about the inevitable Kellen Sampson era of Houston Cougar men's basketball? Bobby, what do you think?
Yeah, so the thing that scares me the most, and like, I hate to say this, is coach in waiting's never seen, like, it's a bias here, right? Like, I didn't go back and look at the last 15 coaches in waitings, but as a general rule, it feels like, and you can take that, coach in waitings always have some kind of problem that pops up around them, whether, some part of the fan base doesn't do that. A lot of times the coach in waiting happens, and then a new athletic director comes in, and the new athletic director kind of wants to bring in their own person, and then things get flaky on the back end. And so that does kind of worry me a little bit of what could happen with this program. Is Kellen Sampson the best coach available when the time comes? You'd think yes, like, there's a good chance he is, but you're a top 10 program. You can go get a lot of coaches that would love to be here, especially if you keep up with the momentum that the program has. In a dream situation for me, Kellen is currently the head coach at like Texas Pan American, or like a UTSA, something like that. He's the head coach there, learning how to become a head coach. He doesn't have that head coaching experience, and yes, he's learning it. But also on the same part of that, I can look at it and go, it wouldn't be crazy if his last name wasn't Sampson, and he wasn't named head coach in waiting, to hire the lead assistant on your top, your greatest coach of the last century that you've had, right? In this century, the best coach. It wouldn't be crazy to think you'd hire his top assistant to fill in that spot. So when you look at it like that and take away the coaching waiting aspect and things like that, I think I can get myself over it. And also, I understand you do what you have to do to keep Kelvin Sampson around, and you name his son coach in waiting, and I think he's earned that. So that's what scares me, is how much of that momentum continues and how much is a Nepo hire, and is he actually ready to do it? But I can talk myself away from that. But what excites me the most is, I think generally speaking, Coach Sampson, Coach Kelvin Sampson is a really nice guy. I think his players love him. His players adore him. People you talk to really like him, but he seems to be rough around the edges sometimes when it comes to media, when it comes to alumni relations. Like I went to the alumni event. There weren't a lot of people at it. It's very disappointing, and he had some very harsh things to say. I think maybe you see a little bit better alumni relations with Kellen versus Kelvin. You really see Lauren really getting more involved in terms of making sure her dad maybe comes off a little bit softer in those conversations. That kind of excites me about it. And also, as much as what I just said scares me, I do think you're going to have a lot of the same culture. You're just going to see it be younger and maybe a little bit less strict, and you're going to see Kellen put in some of his ideas while also maintaining the same culture of it's going to take to win around here. Sam, what about you?
I thought that was really interesting on the positive, an angle that I hadn't considered on the positive side. That like actually quite often top assistants like do get promoted after a legendary head coach. Like we just saw it with John Shire at Duke, which I know Duke is their own very unique thing, but it is not crazy to say U of H has been around the same stratosphere as Duke, like the last handful of years of college men's basketball. And I think what's most on the excited part of that for me, what excites me most about the inevitable Kelvin Sampson era here, it's his ability to evaluate talent. And sure, now U of H is one of those programs that is going to attract high-end recruits, high-end talent because of the on-court success that's now been sustained for a long period of time. But there were a number of really crucial early recruiting and evaluation wins that you could directly trace back to Kellen before U of H men's basketball is established in the same way as it was now. I mean, you can just go through a short list here. Marcus Sasser goes from mid 3-star guard in DFW to starter on Final Four team, All-American, Conference Player of the Year, eventual first-round pick who's still playing in the NBA. Jamal Shed, slightly higher 3-star, but 3-star point guard from Maynard, who ends up being the Big 12 Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, an All-American, current pro. And I think one of the guys people forget, I think the program's first big recruiting win right around when you started making the NCAA tournament was Nate Hinton, a consensus 4-star recruit with a ton of interest from schools that were a lot closer to his home in North Carolina. But he chose U of H because Kellen Sampson was one of the very first people to look at Nate Hinton and be like, this guy is a serious basketball player that we're going to make a big part of our program. Jaywan Roberts, going from unheralded 3-star, who grew up mostly in the Caribbean, who was playing high school ball in Colleen with a family member, ends up being one of the most important players on the best U of H men's basketball team in our lifetimes. Obviously, Kellen would be in a different position as head coach, as he's historically in the staff been associate head coach or whatever his exact title is, or an assistant coach of some kind. But as the head coach, he would still need to be the guy who has the final say on incoming players. And I'm a big believer that for talent evaluation, not that there aren't gradients, but I also believe it's kind of you have it or you don't. And some guys can get away with it because they're just a great leader of men. They're a great ball coach. I think Kelvin Sampson is a great ball coach too. But in my opinion, he has proven over his career, he conclusively has it in terms of being able to identify guys who are good basketball players, who are a good fit for what Houston Cougar men's basketball wants to do. And a pretty good eye for guys who did not come out of high school as heralded future pros, who are now in the association playing at the highest level of basketball. That he's going to be the final say, I think it'll only be a good thing for a future Houston Cougar men's basketball where he is the final say on who is or isn't on this roster. I think the flip side, the most obvious thing that scares you is Kellen has never been a head coach at the D1 level before, which you kind of talked about. And while I have no doubt that Kelvin has and will continue to put more on Kellen's plate with this eventual transition happening in the future, there are some things you simply cannot be prepared for until you are in the head coach's seat. And I have no doubt that both Kelvin and Kellen would acknowledge this. It's not a knock on Kellen, but there can't be anything but a drop-off when you're going from one of the best coaches in the sport's modern history to basically anyone else. Now, you can make an argument that someone who was in this program from day one of Kelvin Sampson being here and was a critical part, as I just talked about, of this program getting off the ground in these 13 or so years now. Kelvin Sampson has absolutely been that, or Kellen Sampson has been that guy for Kelvin Sampson. A little bit of tongue twister there. and he's well positioned in that way to succeed his father. But there's no way if you're going from Kelvin Sampson to virtually anyone else, you're not going to feel that a little bit. And I say that as a huge fan and believer in Kellen, both in his current roles and going forward. And to me, that future transition should light a fire under this program's supporters, both big and small, to really step it up and give him the best possible situation when he is finally the one in charge of this program, because Kelvin is an extremely tough act to follow, as we've well established.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good answer. The talent evaluation is such a great answer there. All right, Sam, we've heard your answer on which sports teams you would add to the athletic department, but gun to your head, bud, what sport would you shut down if we had to cut the budget? And that comes from Brad.
Acknowledging first off that this is purely hypothetical, and the good news is that if U of H was going to do something like this because of recent financial straits, it would have already happened, and the full Big 12 revenue share is coming season thankfully renders this question a purely hypothetical one. But we won't chicken out from answering it here, because interesting mental exercise, even if it's one that I hope no one ever has to actually do. Obviously, you can't cut football or men's basketball as your revenue driving, your front porch of the university kind of sports. Even a fantastical scenario like this one, I couldn't consider those for even a second. I'm going to cut Cougar softball, Bobby. And again, This will never happen, and I'd strongly oppose any attempt to cut a varsity sport of any kind here. But I came to the decision because I'm going to be brutally honest here. It doesn't seem like at present the athletic department is terribly interested in competing in the sport. You hired a head coach who, to be clear, I'd so much rather have in the position over her predecessor, but we'll be honest, wasn't really on any other power conference program's radar for their head coach vacancy. You're not roster building like a team as invested in the sport in the Big 12 as most of your conference counterparts. And I'm also taking into account that this sport is a lot younger than most of U of H's other varsity and intercollegiate sports. Now, I will fully admit a little bit of this is because out of all the sports we cover, softball is probably the one I find least interesting. But before any softball heads get angry at me, I love sports so much that sport I am least interested in does not equal sport I dislike. I still watched a good amount of Cougar softball and voluntarily non-U of H postseason softball this past season. I don't think it gets really compelling, in my opinion, until like the Supers, maybe even Oklahoma City. But I watched a fair amount of it, so I still like softball. But if I had to, just as honest as I could, rank every sport we talk about, softball is probably at the bottom of the list. So that all went into my, again, purely hypothetical, thankfully never going to happen decision. Bobby, who were you cutting if U of H has to cut a sport?
Yeah, when I first saw this question, I was like, oh, this is pretty obvious. It was not softball. Mine is soccer.
Yeah, that was the other one I considered.
Yeah, and the reason why it's soccer is, despite being in what everyone describes as like the place for talent, right? Houston, Dallas, like there's a lot of talent here. The program just has never gotten it done in pretty much anything, like not making postseason. Like it just is very much always been a program since it started. Like softball had years where they were really good and they've shown that they can compete at a level like you have. Soccer just has never done that. We've had coaches leave to go be a private trainer. Like it's just a very odd kind of
I think Susan Bush left for the Kincaid School. Thank you. She left us for a prep high school.
Yeah, like it just, I don't know, man. Like it just seems like you're constantly going round and round with soccer. I think it's a fun one to watch, and I would love to see it succeed. It just, for some reason, it doesn't look like it's clicking here, and I don't know if we're not investing enough or what it is. But the one that really popped to me first was soccer. I was like, it doesn't seem to be working for whatever reason.
Maybe it's my bias because I like soccer more. I will say the coming athletics season, soccer is, I think, in a lot better shape than softball. But obviously, you're not making this, again, purely hypothetical decision just based on the 1 year outlook. And I think you've made a pretty clear cut case for soccer that I can't take any real logical issue with. All right, so our next question, we'll go a little bigger picture college sports here, but very applicable to U of H. Something I've tried to find the right spot to talk about it here. I think this question gives us a chance to. Bill asks, what are your general thoughts on the 5-for-5 rule?
Overall, I like it. I think one of the crazy things to me is it actually seems like we are doing something to protect U.S. athletes. Like over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of athletes coming from overseas. I mean, the Illinois team that beat us was practically, you're seeing a lot of professionals who played overseas coming over and getting the bag here and also getting their college education. And not that I'm somebody who is typically, no, we don't want people to come over or anything like that. Like, that's not where I fall. I do think we are doing something for U.S. athletes, not just for let's go win some basketball games. I really like it for that. I do worry though that we are going to see guys. You're going to see high school kids um, be held back earlier so that they can be a little bit older when they and more developed when they hit school. Right now, I think you see a lot of athletes are declaring early. I think you reclassifying is what it's known as. We just saw Marcellus Wiley's kid do it
Yep.
and go to the Longhorns. And I've never loved that because yes, at the end of the day, senior year of high school really doesn't mean anything, but there are some key moments in just kind of the passage of time that happen. There's something cool about walking across the stage, even if it's high school. Your senior prom, not saying that like it's going to change your life fundamentally, but like I remember my senior prom. I remember the theme of my senior prom. I remember what was good about it, what sucked about it. I remember those things, right? And I think we've turned ourselves into machines, and I think this is going to kind of slow that down. You do, like I said, get a little worried that now you're going to have 19-year-olds as seniors in high school that are absolutely just wrecking shop everywhere. And so you're just going to see it move a little bit. But overall, I like the rule. I think it's going to do well. I love the fact that you can play all 5 years. Like, you don't necessarily need to redshirt guys anymore. So I actually kind of like it. I do think it's going to get a little messy with guys who, played 4 years and they're out of eligibility and they have a 5th year. I am curious to see how the NCAA handles that, but that's and how the courts kind of handle that. But I think overall the 5 for 5, I actually like it. I think it's a solid move, and it's actually the NCAA trying for the first time in a while to find a problem and seeing a problem and trying to find some kind of solution to it.
Yeah, naturally, the least scrupulous lawyers of all time are currently working on trying to get this applied to as many people who don't deserve it as possible. Quick summation if you're a listener who has not been super locked in on the various college rule changes, just a superficial explanation. Basically, this replaces the previous NCAA framework where you had, I think, was it 5 years to play 4 seasons in the field, essentially. Yeah. And now it's basically, like you said, the name, 5 for 5, which this 5-year window or 5-year clock, whatever you want to call it, starts when an athlete enrolls in college or for the academic year immediately following their 19th birthday. It basically ends the practice of redshirting, medical or otherwise, ends the practice of players shutting it down for a season to avoid that season counting against their eligibility and getting a red shirt. Just wanted to give listeners the quickest background on what it actually is. I'm cautiously in favor of this, just because coming from the NCAA, like, I'm not saying my opinions are exactly the same as they were 6 years ago, but one of those, like, I don't want to assume these guys have it too much together, but I also want to reflexively just be like, well, I don't like it because they proposed it either, because I think that's also stupid. But you've really seen the existing rule structure, or certainly the spirit of those rules, get abused pretty prominently in the past few years by teams signing obvious older overseas professionals who technically fall within what is currently allowed, or at least what the NCAA can enforce to play the sport. Most prominently, this is happening in men's basketball, which you talked about, which isn't to say that I don't think a guy who's roughly the age of a high school senior, college freshman, who's coming from overseas in a pro team's academy shouldn't be allowed to come over here, but the rule allows for that. The rule allows for extreme circumstances like military service or pregnancy to pause the clock here. And it protects U.S. athletes, which I think you don't have to be too jingoistic to think that's actually a good thing here. It doesn't mean, like, protecting U.S. athletes doesn't mean excluding outside athletes, but I don't think in any philosophical sense it's unfair to try to give the young people who play high school or prep sports here in the United States not just a horrific disadvantage against a 23-year-old who's been playing in the Italian and Serbian leagues and now wants to see maybe if he can get one last shot at the NBA and get an NIL bag and maybe an American college degree. in the process to give them a better chance against that kind of general other athlete, I think is good. And it became obvious that the previous way of doing things for athlete eligibility just wasn't working for the purpose they were created for. Something needed to be differently. There's probably things that are imperfect about it, but I think you needed something that did away with the mess that redshirting had become. And something, I'm sorry to older college athletes, most college athletes should be around 18 to 23 years old. With you, like, it should be like, not saying you can't go back and get your degree. If you want to play college sports, I don't think it should be littered with people in their mid to late 20s.
Agreed.
Like,
Agreed.
Sorry, people in their mid to late 20s.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. It was starting to get a bit ridiculous, and yeah, you had the COVID year, and we're finally getting past that. So we'll see it change a little bit, but yeah, I agree. All right, Sam, you ready? Another question for you. If you had the athletic ability and had received a D1 scholarship to U of H, which sport would you have loved to have played?
I had to think about this one for a bit, Bobby, but I would have loved to be the weekend starting pitcher or like high-end All-American closer or relief guy for the baseball team. The guy
Donnie
who comes
Joseph.
on the,
You wanted to be Donnie Joseph?
maybe a little bit no offense to I can't remember. I think it's Jesus Freak by DC Talk, which I believe that was his entrance music, and one of the genuine best relievers that I've ever gotten to watch in Cougar baseball. So this is no knock on him. I might go with a little bit different. I think I might
go. He had go DJ.
I would go. I would probably go. It was definitely okay. Dustin will know this, and he'll probably be listening to this. It was definitely at one point Jesus Freak by the Christian rock band DC Talk. I'd probably go Stranglehold by Ted Nugent, and the guy who comes out there with like a 99 mile per hour fastball, just ridiculous breaking stuff. I don't know why I landed on it specifically, but that was the first place I went to when I was kind of thinking through this question. It would just be kind of unreal to be the kind of pitcher who goes out there, strikes out a lot of people, has that intimidating aura on the mound, as the kids like to say these days. I think there are a lot of right answers to this question, but that was the first one I landed on and really stuck with for me. What about you?
Yeah, you got to kind of think about, are we talking about when we enrolled in college, right? Like, when did I start?
I just took this as purely like you can lay hands on me and give me.
Yeah.
Like,
I was, for me, I was like, I want to go back to the time period in which I would have started college, because that's when it would have fit for me. And I was like, what teams at U of H at the time would I have wanted to be a part of? And I growing up playing baseball was definitely an answer for me that I was like, yeah, that would have been really fun to do and be a Division I baseball player. Those U of H teams from 07 to 11 were, or from 08 to 12 were a lot of fun. But my answer here was going to be football, because who wouldn't have wanted to be on those 07 to 2011 U of H teams? I would have been you would have had to completely change my body. I'm 5'7". I would have needed to have been a few inches taller, but put me in as like a speedy slot receiver in that offense. Oh, that would have been so much fun. And you kind of had it with Patrick Edwards, right? Patrick Edwards was about 5'10". I had a history class with him. He was a walk-on, so he didn't even need the scholarship his freshman year. But I just absolutely, being a member of that offense would have been a ton of fun if you go back to 2007, 2011, a time for football. So, but in my mind, if I go back to where I was mentally in that time as well, baseball is a big answer for me there as well.
So we'll go to a more of a future-facing U of H coaching question. Lewis returns to ask, how long do you think Willie Fritz coaches before retiring? And what coaches out there would you be monitoring as potential replacements?
And Sam, just real quick on the last question, I did not shout out who sent us that question. That was Shelly who sent us that question, by the way. But for this one, how long do I think Coach Fritz coaches before retiring? To answer that one, I think he's going to see Keyshawn Henderson out. I think that's probably the minimum, depending on the success and what's kind of going on and how the recruiting looks and things like that. I think you could go past that, but I think the minimum you're going to see him is at least, fingers crossed, 4 years that Keyshawn's here, maybe 3. But I think that's probably the best recruit he's ever gotten. It's probably Keyshawn's probably the best player he's had the chance to mold. And I think every coach wants a guy like that at least once. And I think he's going to see that out. And then coaches would I be monitoring as potential replacements? That's so hard to answer for 3-4 years down the road because anything could happen, right? Trailer at UTSA could maybe not get the Baylor job this year, and then reel off 3 straight and actually start building a program at UTSA and not have a couple of really good years. There could be who knows what's going to happen in North Texas. I don't think we'll ever be in a spot where we're going to go poach from like an SEC team. Like we're not going to go get Vanderbilt's coach or Kentucky's coach or anything like that. Like we're going to have to be somebody who hires from the lower ranks and hires up. So it's really tough to say. But I would look if you're interested in who you should kind of follow UTSA, follow UNT, follow teams like that, and who their coaches are, and then kind of look who's Tulane got, who does Oola Law find a guy who can go and suddenly he's going 9-3 in the Sun Belt? Does UTEP's coach do something like that? Like look at those lower tier in the geographical region, those G5 programs, and kind of follow their coaches.
Acknowledging I'm not in Willie Fritz's head and we're not close personal friends here, I don't think anyone who follows UH football would look at Willie Fritz and say, regardless of his age, that this is a guy who looks like he's lacking energy. This is a guy who looks like he's worn out by coaching in the current era of football. I mean, quite the opposite, really. It's crazy that despite being over a decade older than his predecessor, I mean, cast your mind back to Dana Holgerson's various required media appearances over his last 2 seasons at U of H. I don't think I'm being uncharitable to him when I say that his mood in those public appearances was pretty beat down. Like he wasn't happy about what his job required, not to mention the frustration and blowups you saw on the sideline when the camera was on him. Age really can be a mindset, as cliche as that sounds. And I think that's important context to this question. Gun to my head, I would say he is coaching in college somewhere for 6 to 10 more years. So
wow.
Split the difference and say, I think he coaches 8 more years. Don't think that's a guarantee he retires as U of H's head coach either. I think there's a good chance of him retiring as U of H head coach because there are things that Willie genuinely likes about being here and what being in Houston allows him to do. And I think the guy just likes coaching football. Like he loves his family, like loves being close to his grandkids and working with his son and being in the same city as his daughter. Like that's all very important stuff to him. I believe he's being genuine in that. I think he's the kind of guy who would be bored out of his skin if he couldn't coach ball, if he couldn't be coaching ball or thinking about coaching ball. Like the guy loves coaching football. And so while I do think he genuinely likes being here, U of H's athletic brass and big dollar donors would be wise not to take it as a given that he'll coach until he retires here. You said a lot of what I was going to say. I will just add to that second part of the question. I mean, who knows if this happens 5 or 6 years from now? I mean, the coaching carousel is going to be entirely different than what it is right this moment. Mm-hmm. We really probably don't have an idea of who the best fit candidates would be. So I would just say on the off chance this happens in the next year or so, and he's still in this job, I would hope G.J. Kinney from Texas State would be one of your first calls. Very well-connected recruiter who led Texas State over these last 3 seasons by far their most successful period since moving up to Division I FBS. 23 wins in 3 seasons. That might not scream at you, Bobby. It took them the 8 full seasons prior to G.J. Kinney taking over to win 23 total football games. Like, that's how bad that situation was. I lived 5 minutes from their stadium for a few years. Nobody in San Marcos cared. People have Texas State pride. They would probably laugh in your face at that time if you're like, do you go to the football games here?
Yeah.
Say, no, the team is terrible. They would, like, show up to, like, the one big game against, like, Houston. It was funny to me, like, the Whataburgers in San Marcos, they needed at the time to have, like, a stock shot of Bobcat Stadium in their Whataburgers, because the Whataburger likes to have a little local flavor.
Yep.
Walls and stuff, especially when you're in smaller towns or college towns. And you could tell the picture at the I-35 Whataburger in San Marcos was our game, because you could see like a large, like they clearly tried to mess with the color gradient so that it didn't be obvious, but you could tell like most of the stadium was wearing red, which I think they had an opener against Tech after they did like a major renovation. So it was either that game or our game.
Nice.
Like, oh yeah, you had to find when you guys played a legit team to actually get a good crowd shot for your various artwork here. That's not the program it is now at all, and that's thanks to GJ Kinney. I don't think, unfortunately, I think it's going to line up so he goes to a school that you're familiar with in a town that you spent part of your adolescence in.
Yes,
on
I do believe
Waco.
that is happening as well.
I believe that's going to happen after this year, and they finally scrounge up enough pennies to fire Dave Aranda. But
agreed.
He if that ever lined up, he would be my first call, because I genuinely do think the guy is a very good coach who the overall record I think maybe obscures how good he is and how much people appreciate how good he is.
I agree. All right, Sam, final question. This one comes from some dude named Dustin. Which Cougar bat and ball sport finishes higher in the Big 12 standings this coming year?
I had to think about this one a bit. I went with Cougar baseball because I just think they have a slightly better coaching staff, and I could see that. I don't think either team is going to be an NCAA team, unfortunately, in 2027. Would love to be wrong in either of those cases. But I still see baseball, even with an entirely new roster and a lot of your new faces being guys you're kind of hoping for some development on, or, the guy having a breakout season, some, not long shots the right word, but some guys you're kind of rolling the dice on, not for anything negative, just for, hey, this is a guy who has unbelievable swing and miss stuff. The problem is he also gives up a lot of home runs or something like that. Or, hey, this guy hit 375 as a freshman, but it was in a league considerably worse than this one. So he might need a year or two to transition. Things like that.
Yeah.
Which is where what UH has to be, where the program is right now. Like, that's where you have to be living. And that's where, if you had fair expectations, that's where the new coach is probably going to be living. I still think baseball is also in a slightly easier position to compete in as a sport. I think Big 12 softball generally, not that Big 12 baseball doesn't have good programs. I think Big 12 softball is a little more difficult top to bottom and a little tougher to break out of the basement, which U of H hasn't done in the sport yet. So that's my pick here, even though I don't make it with as much confidence now. As I started at baseball and my confidence kind of chipped away a bit on it, but I still ultimately, I still stay with my answer of baseball here.
Yeah, mine's going to be baseball as well. I can squint my eyes and see where this baseball program is in a much better spot than softball in terms of the recruits they brought in. Even though it is an all new roster, not to say that I just haven't seen the pitching that I want to see come via the portal that I was hoping for. So I do think it's baseball, like you said. Some guys where you can squint and see that they're clearly going for a type there, and they think they can tighten things up with their staff. I don't know. That's why I think it's baseball. Not that I think softball is going to do poorly or anything like that, but I just haven't seen it from softball yet. Some of the guys in baseball, I can actually go, yeah, I can see how he's going to be good.
That's it, buddy. Summer Q&A in the books. Tell us
Summer Q&A in the books. Well, that is it for this episode, like you said. We want to thank you guys so much for listening, even throughout the summer. We hope this makes road trips a little bit easier, or the dog days of summer a little bit easier for you. So thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you guys a ton. If you have any feedback for us, you can always find us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at SH Podcast. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. If you want to throw some money behind the project that we're running here, heading into, what year did you say? Season 12, Sam?
It'll be season 12 starting next month.
Season 12 starting next month. If you want to throw a little bit of coin at that, $5 a month gets you some premium content. We thank you guys so much, those patrons who do it. So thank you guys so much for that. And Sam, what do we always say here, buddy?
Go Coogs.
All right. Go Coogs! Let's go!